Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Penn Foster Live. It is 2026. It is the first episode of the year. I am so pumped. We have an awesome guest here today. But before we introduce her, I'm going to pass it off to Jess to do some quick reminders and run over the agenda.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. Happy 2026. Glad that we are all back together in a new year. And we have a lot of really great info coming for you today from Kristen, who you may recognize from some previous Facebook Lives, but always comes with really great tips and tricks from a hiring manager. So stay tuned. But before we jump in, if you are a current student and you have questions about your account, definitely check out your Learner Center to get your help there. And if you are not currently a student, you can give us a call at admissions if you are thinking about programs, enrolling, anything like that. That number is 1-888-427-6500. One more thing is that we are obviously want to keep this conversation going and want to talk to you guys in the comments. So definitely leave questions, thoughts, anything that you have in the comments below, but just don't put anything sensitive in there because these comments are very public. So please don't put your student account ID, any personal information in the very public comments. If you have questions about your account, you can give us a call or you can check it out via your Learner Center. For our agenda today, we're really excited to have Kristen here with us again. This is probably one of my favorite lives we do every year just because she comes with such great information. She's going to be sharing expert advice on what employers are looking for when hiring, how you can stand out from the crowd, and tips for applying for jobs, and some resume and interview tips. So a lot of really great information. But before we get into that information, we need to meet who's giving it to us. So welcome, Kristen. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This is always one of my favorite things to do, and I can't wait to start. So thank you for having me again.
Yeah, we are super excited to have you on this episode, Kristen. You are, without a doubt, one of the most popular guests that we always have on Penn Foster Live. And Jess and I just love talking to you. So we were curious more about you. Could you introduce yourself and your current role? Because if we have a lot of new viewers, they probably don't know who you are. So could you give us a little rundown and more about your career journey?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been with Penn Foster Group for 10 years. So it's been exciting. I've had quite the journey with different roles and positions. Right now, I work as part of the HR team, human resources, as part of the talent acquisition team. And we go through resumes, we talk to candidates, we help the hiring managers connect with candidates and get jobs. So I've been doing this for the HR part for about 5 or 6 years now. So I'm happy to be here to help guide you on your path. And every year we do this, but it's not the same every year. It's the same core approach, but things are changing as we know, and we'll talk a little bit more about AI as we get into our conversation, but some new things come up, and I'm happy to share that with you so you have a more successful journey in your career search. So thanks again.
Awesome. No, thank you, Kristen. Thank you for joining us and for bringing all of your insider information and tips to our audience. It's definitely something that everybody can benefit from having this knowledge. Even if you are still working through your program, but will be looking to apply to jobs when you're finished, or if you are job searching right now. So, in terms of standing out from the crowd or tips for applying in 2026, what are the key points that everybody should be keeping in mind for the job market in 2026?
Well, if you're looking for a job and you know what specific job you're looking for, the best approach is to customize your resume. If you don't have a resume yet, there's plenty of resume building tools out there. You can even use, some AI tools to help you write it and proofread it. But really understanding the duties and the skills that employer is looking for so that you can customize your resume. You may not want to use the same resume for every job you apply for. You're going to look at the job description. You're going to pick out the skills that they're looking for that you have and make sure those are on your resume. Because many times employers are using an applicant tracking system or some kind of software that is looking for those keywords specifically. And if you have them in there and they match, your resume will come forward for the hiring manager to review. So that's one good point I can say is match responsibilities to what your skills are on your resume.
I think that that's really important, specifically in 2026, where a lot of hiring managers are probably using tools to specifically pull out keywords or things that they're looking for in resumes. I know, Kristen, that you've said before in these lives that a lot of times when hiring managers are looking through a million resumes, they're skimming and trying to find those buzzwords. So it's important to make sure that your resume is specifically what they're going to be looking for, right?
Right. And it's important when you're looking at the job description and you're looking at the application that you're reading it thoroughly. Many times within the job description, the application process, they're asking you questions, they're telling you directives or instructions on what to do next. It's important that you read that thoroughly. If you do submit your application, and especially if you get called for an interview, do some research on that company, pull up their website, check for reviews, see what people are saying, learn a little bit about what they're doing as a business, what their product is, or their method of sales, so that what they do and you can talk about it in the interview process.
And then, Kristen, I was curious, and I'm sure a lot of our learners out there are too, especially in 2026. What are your thoughts on a cover letter? Is it necessary? What is it that you would recommend to our learners who might be looking for a new job?
I mean, it depends a lot. A lot of recruiters will tell you it doesn't matter, right? They're looking at the resume and the skills. I think it's a nice touch. I would recommend a cover letter, a short cover letter, only, 3 short paragraphs with 3 sentences each, explaining, how you became interested in the role. I saw your website. I'm interested in what you're doing. This is why I would like the role. I look forward to learning more about it. It goes the extra mile. It sets you apart a little bit. If you're not sure, if they don't, if they ask for one or if it's optional, I would submit it. If it's not, if it's, a lot of employers don't necessarily even require it, but I would say anything that sets you apart is more professional or going the extra mile or shows a little bit of extra motivation. You want the role, because attitude is half of, and we'll talk about this later too, is attitude is half of it, skills and experience, but what attitude you bring and that motivation, that will stand out to them.
I love how you mentioned.
Sorry,
Oh,
Jenny.
go ahead, Jess, sorry.
I was just going to ask, I know in terms of standing out, obviously that requires a level of human touch. And I know obviously you said we were going to talk about AI. I'm sure it's going to come up a couple of times. But in terms of using AI to potentially help you write a cover letter or write your resume, how easy is it for employers to be able to weed out resumes and cover letters that were made using AI versus ones that aren't? Is it something that people should be concerned about when they're, say you're applying to a bunch of different jobs and you have to tailor your cover letter to 5 or 6 different jobs? You know what I mean? Like, obviously AI can be there to help you with that, but is it something that is going to flag the hiring manager? What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I mean, AI relatively is in its infancy, right? So it depends, if you can use AI to help you proofread, right? And maybe polish, but I wouldn't necessarily submit a cover letter that's totally AI generated that would use terms and phrases that you personally wouldn't normally use. If it looks, I mean, to a degree, we expect and appreciate the fact that people use AI to polish things, but not necessarily to do everything. And even when we interview people, we're trying to determine if they're using AI to answer the questions, right? We're trying to make sure that they're authentic and genuine and have have the skills that we're looking for. So it's important that you're using it as a tool, but it's not the only thing that you're using to get forward. And it can be, if it becomes really very evident, yes, it could be a deterrent for the hiring manager. But this is such a slippery slope because it's so new, right? And we're promoting it, but yet we're saying don't misuse it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely hard to, when you have it's in front of you, it could be the easiest way out humanly possible, right? And yeah, it's going to make something up and you can copy and paste that and you can send it over, but without, your human touch or what makes you stand out, it's not going to make you stand out against every other AI generated cover letter that, has ever been created through ChatGPT or whatever you're using.
Right. Yeah, very good point.
In terms of resumes, how often should you be kind of like revisiting your resume and updating it?
I mean, anytime you're changing careers or you're doing something, say you do volunteer work, or you complete a program, or you complete a course like an Excel course or any kind of classes that you're taking, add that to your resume. I would revisit it. If you're looking for a job, you're going to want to keep that always updated as things happen. But, a few times a year, take a look at it. Make sure that it's, again, making sure the language is polished and all of the things that you've done are still apply and all of that. So just making sure that it's really very current for what you've been doing lately.
That makes complete sense.
And then, Kristen, before we jump into our next topic, it's pretty obvious that the job market hasn't been the same for quite some time. And as somebody who is doing interviews and talking to so many candidates, I'm sure a lot of learners out there are curious to hear more on what you think of the current market. How is it that candidates are going through these interview stages? What is it that you can speak to and say that you've noticed that has changed, let's say, compared to a year or two ago?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's always changing, right? So the job market, the demand is always changing. It's, you're just trying to keep up with it. But I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is the introduction of AI into it. So I think, and there's not as high demand of jobs in certain fields. So we're seeing more candidates applying for fewer jobs. So we have a lot of candidates to go through. And I think that just speaks to, what's going on in the world and the market and everything, like that. But I think the biggest thing, is we have a lot of candidates for one role. And with the introduction of AI, it's presents its challenges, but it also presents opportunities as well. So I think that's the biggest thing. So when we're talking to people, we're trying to assess their skills and their, excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. One sec. Sorry, didn't want to make you listen to that. So, we're assessing their skills and their experience, and we're looking at, what they've been doing in their career, but talking to them and learning about what makes them tick and their personality and their attitude towards life. And I mean, especially in our roles, we're a very mission-driven organization, and many places that you'll apply are mission driven. So being, having that teamwork attitude, a camaraderie towards a goal, like being able to be helpful to people, empowering others, coming in with a very open mindset and motivated, and just I think that is 50% of what will get you the job, right? The other part is you have to have some skills, but honestly, many places you'll apply for, you can be taught the skills. The attitude is why they want to hire you. Do they want to work with you? Do you want to contribute to their success? Are you helpful? Are you kind? Are you friendly? Like, that goes a long way in the world now. And I can say over the years, that has, and I don't know if I've said this before, but it has taken more of a priority than it has in the past. And so if you have that drive and you have that motivation to help others, people want to hire you. So sorry, I know sometimes I just keep going, so I'm sorry. I'll stop for a minute.
That's completely fine. I think that what you're saying is perfect to move into the next topic, because obviously you have your resume, you write your cover letter. That's all something that doesn't have your personality like really attached to it. That comes when you get in front of somebody for an interview and you can kind of talk to them face to face or over the phone, and that's kind of all on you. So obviously you get through that first part, you have your great resume, you have your cover letter, you get the interview, you move on to that piece. And I think that's where a lot of this comes in. So, in terms of ways to set yourself up for success for an interview, what would your top tips there be?
Well, if you get called in for an interview, it'll most likely be in person or a virtual. Could be a phone screening, but either way, you can still smile across a phone. I can tell when I'm talking to somebody what their personality is just by the way they ask questions and talk, and we get to know each other. But I think it's important that you're putting your best professional self forward. If you're going in person and you're in the video, dress for success. Dress, appropriate for the job. To your best ability. I'll do a little research about the company. That comes, back to what we were talking about earlier, is make sure you know where you're interviewing, the company. It's very important. If I talk to people and they haven't done research, or they have no idea what the job is, it's not good, because that's my first impression of them, is that they didn't care enough to even know who we were, right? So do your research, know who they are, dress for success, dress the part, you want to set yourself aside from others. Remember, a lot of people are applying for that same job. You want to be set aside. You've done the cover letter, you've gotten the interview now. Look appropriate, be professional. Don't use AI to answer your questions. Look at the camera or make eye contact with the person. Don't check your phone. Shut your phone off, right? Be in a space, if you're virtually, where you're not bothered and interrupted. Be motivated, be friendly, be appreciative of the opportunity. That goes a long way. But talk about, when you want to bring your best foot forward as far as your resume. If you're a student, you're going to, you just graduated, you'll have your education at the top of your resume. And for those of you who are, didn't just graduate, but have had career opportunities, you'll put those at the top, and you'll kind of walk through what you've done and how it can be of value to your new employer. So that will set you aside, and knowing a lot, having a great attitude, and talking about your skills and your motivation for helping them is the key to getting that job.
I think those are awesome tips. I really like, Kristen, how you keep talking about attitude, and I know it's something that we keep jumping back to, but in today's market where, like you mentioned, there are so many candidates who are applying for the same job, chances are they probably have the same skill set as you, and your attitude in those interviews and really how you communicate through email as well. I think that's a big one that I've noticed is super important, because interviews, people are stressed, you're nervous, you're thinking about years worth of your experience, but how you really communicate that and show your interest is so, so, so important, because at the end of the day, you're working with other humans too. So it's super important to just have a great team. And when you learners out there are doing interviews and you're trying to figure out the best fit for you, the company that you're interviewing with, they're also trying to find the right fit as well. Um, so I think attitude is just super important. And with that, a big part of interviews is asking questions. So Kristen, any tips for our learners when it comes to additional questions that they might ask during an interview? Because everybody, of course, wants to know about the salary. Of course, that is a top question, the job expectations, but that usually is outlined in the description when you're applying. How is it that candidates could stand out while they're doing their interviews?
Yeah, it's hard. Interviews are you're nervous, right? It's hard to think of things to say and present yourself in the best possible light, and then have questions at the end. And so, if you're not sure what to ask, I would always ask about their work culture, like what their work environment is like, about the benefits, maybe, what does their benefits package look like? It shows that you're thinking about everything, right? You're considering it. You're interviewing them. We're interviewing you, and we want to make sure we're all on the same page. So ask about their benefits. I will tell you that I am not offended when someone asks the salary. Okay. It's not the first thing you want to ask in the interview. Of course, you don't want to make it seem like the only reason you're there is to know what the money is, right? Even though we all know we're working for money, but that's just not the order you want to present it in. Maybe towards the end, if you really ask them for a range, ask them about the benefits, ask them about the work balance, and then ask, say, what would be the starting compensation or starting salary for this range? I just, want to make sure that it works for everyone. Just be really nice about it. If they don't tell you, then they don't tell you. There's nothing more you can do other than go through the process and see if they offer you and what they offer, and then consider. But otherwise, they may, you might get the information you need. And I will tell you, I've been doing this for years. I am not offended by it. I think it's a reasonable question. And in fact, I usually just tell people what the range is so they don't even have to wonder. But that's how I do it. Not every company is like that, but it's okay to ask. It's just it wouldn't be appropriate to ask it right away.
Right.
Yeah, I think
that makes sense.
super.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Jess.
I was just going to say, I think it's good to find that out, especially if you get to the end of an interview and you're like, okay, if the money is right, and they offer me this job, I'm going to take it. That being said, sometimes the job is great. It lines up with your expectations, but the salary is not what you necessarily need in our economy to, support yourself, your extraneous circumstances, your family, those kind of things. So it might be better at that point, if it's something that you're genuinely going to consider, to ask that question, so that if it's not what you're looking for, you can, kind of figure out how to let them know that in a way that they're not, not I want to say wasting their time, but you're like, I would like to pull myself out of consideration for this because I don't think the salary is going to be right for me. And that kind of does them a favor too, because then that's one less person they have to consider. And it's already really hard when you're trying to fill a role and you have, 2 or 3 people that you're trying to figure out who the right fit is. If somebody is going to not take the job anyway because it's not the money they're looking for, it's better to kind of pull yourself out of consideration for that earlier than later.
Definitely. And you don't even have to do it right then. You can send an email, I'm withdrawing. And to the point of emails is, if you email the hiring manager, ask them for their email during the interview. If you don't already have it, you probably do. But if you don't, ask them for their email address and then send them a follow-up the same day or the next day, just right away almost. And to thank them for that time. You're really excited. You've learned all about their company now, and you're excited to join their team. That goes a long way. So just a quick email, nothing long, nothing crazy, just a couple of sentences to just kind of nudge and remind them that, hey, even after meeting you, I am even more excited, and you should choose me. That's kind of the message you want to send to them.
I love that.
Those are all super amazing tips, but learners, those of you who are watching, I hope you guys took notes. Make sure to ask as many questions as possible during your interview process, just so that you know what you're signing up for and what type of company and team you're joining. So not just the salary, but also the work culture, like Kristen mentioned. If they mention that, hey, we're a fast-paced company, and you know that you're not somebody who enjoys that kind of environment, then again, similar to what Jess said, you could take yourself out of the interview process. But make sure to ask a lot of questions and practice and do those additional follow-ups, like Kristen said, with the follow-up emails. But yeah, awesome tips. Kristen, thank you so much for joining us today. Any final tips that you'd like to leave our learners with?
Yes, while you were talking, it made me think, make sure you ask them the shift hours that you'll need to be working. So that you know if that shift works for you, how far the commute is if you have to drive, so make sure that works in your life and that's going to give you a good life balance. So, try to get that information ahead of time as well.
That's a really good point, because I know I've had friends in that situation where they've gotten to the end of an interview process and then they find out the shift and it doesn't work for them. And that kind of just is like the worst for everybody all around. It's the worst for the employer. It's the worst for you. So I think, like Jenny said, like making sure that you have all the questions that you need answered by the end of that interview, to once they make you an offer, you can be certain that it's going to be right for you.
Right. Absolutely. And be genuine, be genuine, be yourself in the interviews, be kind, be yourself. I know it's nerve wracking, so practice ahead of time if you need to, sit in front of the mirror and practice with the mirror, whatever it takes to, calm your nerves so that you feel confident, that you can be your genuine, authentic self. And when you leave the interview, you thought, I've gave it all I had. And, what happens now, right? So, I appreciate this so much, guys. Thank you.
No,
thank you. These are all awesome tips. And I know, Kristen, we've been asking you a lot of tips and recommendations. I wanted to pass it off to Jess, since you've heard all these awesome strategies. We've talked to Kristen multiple times. What is something that she might have not mentioned that you think is important, or something that maybe she did that you want to emphasize before we end the call?
One thing that I have been told before is that in interviews, not to toot my own horn, but that I do a really good job at selling myself. And I think that that's something you have to think in your brain when you're going into an interview. Not only are you presenting the skills and the reasons why they should hire you, but you need to be able to make them believe in you as much as you believe in yourself for this role. So go in, be confident. Sometimes that confidence is not always there, and sometimes you got to fake it when you get in there, but you got to be able to sell yourself if you want them to take a chance on you. So that is one thing that I've taken into any interview I've done since that's been brought up to me, is just know that, like, you are what you want them to want you. So you need to make them want you. And that comes from not only showcasing your skills, showing your personality, being authentic, being excited, being present. All the things we talk about go into that. But that's like the best way I can put it, frankly. Just you got to sell yourself,
Yeah, you're right on the money. Right on the money. That's what'll get you the job.
How about you, Jenny? Anything that we talked about that stood out specifically to you that was really important, or that you, or any tips that you have from your personal experience?
Yeah, I know Kristen kept mentioning attitude, and I think it is so important during interviews. But one thing that many people don't think about is the attitude that you present during the interviews is the one that you'll have to keep up during the duration of your role. So if you're being too fake, or you're faking it to a point where it's not who you are, and when you're in the role, that kind of facade will kind of fall through eventually. And I've seen that happen many times, where I've talked to a couple of candidates and I thought, oh, they're really friendly, or they're very, they just presented themselves in a way that was a complete opposite. Um, And if you're doing multiple rounds, just because you're talking to one person doesn't mean that the next round you should be completely different, because chances are they're all communicating with each other. So let's say you've had a bad day with one interviewer, but all of a sudden you're super extroverted and it's very odd compared to your last one. It is pretty noticeable. So I think being authentic is just super important because, for example, I don't know if I'm wording it correctly, but if you're not a chatty person and you're chatting it up during your interview process and then it's just not who you are, I don't think it'll be a good role for you at the end of the day, not just a company, but for you as yourself as a human. I think recognizing your behaviors and your attitude and what kind of work culture you like, I think that's super important. So just being honest about what you want, even though you do want the job, really recognizing what kind of hiring manager that you want to work with, or the team, or the projects that you want to do. I think that's super important to be aligned with at the end of the day. So that's my take on it. So fake it till you make it, but to a certain extent is what I'd like to say.
Agreed. That makes perfect sense.
But yeah, I know we're running short on time. So again, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us here on Penn Foster Live. Super excited to always have you here. And I know our learners always appreciate your helpful tips. But if any of you have any questions about Penn Foster, or if you're thinking about enrolling, make sure to visit your Learner Center or give us a call at 188-427-6500. We're always here to help you. If you want us to cover more topics, if you want Kristen to come back during the year, definitely let us know in the comments. If you want to catch up on a past episode of Penn Foster Live, head on over to our YouTube channel and we'll link that below so you could watch it anytime. We recorded with Kristen last year, so if you want to check out that video as well, she has a bunch of awesome tips from there. And if you're a Penn Foster alum or soon to be, make sure to join our alumni group. We have a special link for you where you could join and connect with other alumni and build your network, which is also super important when you're looking for a job to make connections. But yeah, we have a bunch of awesome and helpful links to share, which we'll drop below. So besides the alumni group, the Facebook pages, the Penn Foster Live, we also have a TikTok account if you like short form. If you'd like to see our graduation photos from last year, which was an awesome event, we'll drop that. If you graduated, we want to celebrate you, so make sure to upload your photo and we would love to share that on social media. Basically, we're sharing a bunch of awesome, helpful links for you guys. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in and we'll see you guys in February. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you so much. Have a good
Thank you,
day.
Kristen.
Good
Bye,
luck.
everybody.